Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, where we help dads create a healthier and less traumatic divorce for themselves and their children. My name is Jude Sandoval and I am your host. I hope that you enjoyed a fantastic Easter and Easter weekend here. I know that the weekend has been unbelievably gorgeous here in Denver, Colorado, finally getting these 70-degree spring days. So I can definitely get used to that, and hopefully you're having some good weather as well. This week, I had the distinct honor of being on the Great Dad Talks podcast with Paul Banas, who is the founder of GreatDad.com. We had a fantastic conversation ranging everywhere from how men think and feel differently during divorce to best ways to parent, etc. So I'm going to have that coming up here for you, that interview. But before that, I just wanted to remind you that the dadsdivorceblueprint.com registration is up and running. If you go to the website dadsdivorceblueprint.com, you can register for the class. We've got just let's call it a pre-marketing offer out there right now. If you check it out, it's extraordinarily discounted at the moment, and we are only going to limit this to 20 men. The class is only going to be men, and it's going to be a community of men, and there's going to be a lot of sharing and talking about this, and so we keep it limited. Right now, there's a limited offer, so go check it out at dadsdivorceblueprints.com. So now, my interview with Paul Banas on Great Dads podcast. I hope you enjoy, and I will chat with you next week.
Hi, it's Paul Banas of GreatDad.com, and I'm here with Jude Sandoval today. I've got that right, the pronunciation, Sandoval?
That is correct. I'm happy to be here, Paul.
Thanks for taking the time. Jude runs a website called the DivorcedAdvocate.com. And he also has a podcast with that same name. And he's been doing a lot of work in the divorce dad field. And I'm really excited to kind of dig deep into this today because Jude is also a coach, as I am, and is working with dads specifically going through divorce. And we'll have a lot to say about how dads handle the whole situation with divorce, and specifically the effect on kids, because I think that at the end of the day, you know, Jude, you've got 3 girls of your own. I've got 2 kids. Luckily, I'm not divorced, but they're the most important thing in my life. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me be here. I appreciate it.
So why don't you go back and tell maybe your story of why this became important to you? It seems like all of us dads who are really active in this space, we all have a backstory of something either dramatic or that really affected us, got us into this.
Right. So I was married for 11 years, and so now that puts me at being divorced coming up here on about 9 years. So I was divorced around 2013. Like you said, I have 3 daughters. At the time of the divorce, they were about 6, 4, and 2. So relatively young. But my experience through the divorce and post-divorce has really been just a case study in the challenges, and some of them self-imposed, some of them not self-imposed challenges of going through the court process, going through co-parenting, being a single father, dating after divorce, etc. So after 9 years, or actually about 4 years ago, I started looking into getting involved in coaching. Really wanted to make a shift in what I am doing and try to help people, and became an integrative wellness coach as well as a neuro-linguistic practitioner. And then started working with men around masculinity. But the more and more men that I spoke to, the more and more I found were going through issues and challenges around divorce. And I don't know if that's just because I was or have, and it's kind of funny how the universe works sometimes, but.
Well, I think it's a pain point. It's definitely, if you've gone through this as either a child or a parent, it's a time when you really are seeking help. And some people go to therapy, some people do therapy and coaching because they do different things.
Yeah. And that's absolutely true. It's one of the top, I think, two things that they find are the most stressful is divorce. And the thing that I really found with men and was the biggest challenge is that men that seem to experience divorce differently than women. So our masculine nature, and this was what really then drew me to niche to divorce the dads,
Mhm.
was that our masculine nature doesn't work well with the chaotic timing of divorce. Because even though no matter what the circumstances are around the divorce, who's been, who's poor behavior, it always takes two to tango, right? But men, 70%, 70 plus percent of the time are the ones that are served. And
Mm.
that is really a challenge because, again, no matter who was doing what, et cetera, you become what Bruce Fisher calls the dumpy. And that creates just mass chaos. And men,
Yeah.
masculine, and we're just talking about energies, right? Masculine energies tend and want to be orderly, driven, have a direction, know where you're going. And this just turns it completely upside down, which is stressful, difficult, and challenging. But Paul, the other thing is it's a huge, huge opportunity.
Mm.
Huge opportunity.
How so?
Huge opportunity to assess.
Mm-hmm.
To assess yourself, to assess what happened, to really look deeply. And that's what I find is that during this time, especially dads, especially men with children, are very open and willing to look at what happened, what's going on, and then start really doing the work to create a life that can be as good, if not better than what they currently have.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing if you're able to bring people to that realization that even the worst of times, in this case, divorce, can really be a gift and opportunity. And I think you're right, is that a lot of us bumble through our lives and we kind of, we struggle through high school, we struggle through college, we get a job, we get climb the ladder, our little hamster wheels, and there's not a lot of time there for self introspection, and men just don't do that in general. We don't spend a lot of time really getting in touch with our feelings, and it's a great thing to be able to do that, especially if you've got kids. So having a coach, it's good for the audience to understand the difference between coaching and therapy. Therapy is usually looking back on pain points in childhood, trying to figure out what the dynamics were that brought you the situation. It's always more therapeutic. You're feeling horrible, you're trying to get back to zero. Whereas in coaching, we're usually trying to get from somebody who's fairly well equilibrated and optimize them. And if divorce is that moment when people can really find their true meanings and get in touch with those things, what a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's results oriented is what I try to say,
Yeah,
which is why the first step when I'm working with men is really trying to figure out and create what that vision and direction is, where you want to go, because everything's chaotic and turned upside down. So when I'm working privately with men, we work to, okay, I understand what's going on, right? You may need to do some work, like you said, with a therapist. And therapy, I feel, and I'm going to get off on a little tangent here, I think therapy combined with coaching is probably the most awesome way that you can go through any challenge that you're working with, because it gives you both perspectives, and both perspectives are helpful and fantastic. But at the very least, if you can get a therapist or a coach, or get involved in some community, especially when you're going through something stressful like divorce, because going through it yourself, and I've had clients say, I just shut myself in my home and closed the drapes for 3 years and was depressed. And that's an awful way to go about it. But at the very least, and this is why I've created the Divorced Advocate, is to have a community of men that are going through it, that have gone through it, to be able to support each other. Because oftentimes, like you stated, we didn't grow up with learning how to talk about this stuff. My dad, there was a generation. He didn't talk about, we didn't go through any of this. The conversations I have with my daughters and say, please try to learn, see what I'm doing. I'm open, I'm making mistakes, and I still make mistakes, and that's okay. But just, try to learn from me and try to listen.
Yeah, that vulnerability thing. And they're going to figure out that you're vulnerable very quickly anyway. So you might as well be open about that right from the start. But I love what you're saying about the groups and getting support, because I've found with my clients is that quite often the problems that they see as intractable, because back to what you said about the chaos, when you're in it, it's like, oh, you don't understand. I've got the childcare. I got my ex-spouse is crazy, or she's something else, and then I've got this job situation, and coaching is really great, and men's groups too, for trying to tease out those things like, well, you can solve that one. That one's an easy one. We can do that. This one over here is going to take a little bit of work. That's more of a long-term thing, but you can kind of get order out of that chaos. Is that what you find with your both men's groups and working one-on-one?
Oh, absolutely. And I always recommend and I didn't do this, and it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. My path was such that it was, but if you can get involved with therapy, if you can get involved with a coach, it would have been so much more productive for me. I at least had a great friend, but I always say, your friends don't always give the greatest advice, and God bless him, he had a lot of advice because he's Italian like me, and wanted to tell me what we should be doing or what I should be doing, but some of it was just horrible. But and also to your point, once you get into that, and I know it was probably about 5-6 years ago now, one of my aha moments was sitting in a group like this, listening and going, holy cow, I'm not the only one that's having these crazy thoughts in my mind. Maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe other people are going through this. Maybe other people are having these thoughts and feelings. And I can tell you now, it's really interesting. I do a weekly divorced men's group, and we'll be talking. There's some regulars, and by and large, every time somebody will say, I was just curled up in a ball crying in my bed, you just hear a collective sigh of relief from particularly newcomers going, oh my God, really? He was too? And it just kind of loosens people up, knowing, oh man, that's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to share that I was in my bed crying last night myself to sleep, or this morning, or whatever, because that's okay. It happens to all of us.
So let's talk a little bit about the effect on the kids, because we were talking a little bit earlier about how it really comes down to taking care of yourself first and making sure you're whole. Can you talk about your philosophy on that part, and then how it translates to then taking care of the kids? Because you're more than co-parenting. You've got full custody, or
yeah. So, well, we've had some challenges, and on and off. I've had 100% parenting time. Currently, I have 100% with one of them and 50-50 with the other one. So, yeah. So it's fluid. We'll just leave it at that. But I seem to always be in the thick of it, so it keeps me fresh for sure. But the self-care thing is really, really huge, and it goes to that philosophy, the plane. You can't help somebody else with your oxygen mask in an emergency if you don't have it on yourself, because you're going to die, right? And then you won't be able to help anybody. And the one thing that I see that was true with me was not taking the time to care for myself, making sure that my needs are met. And when I mean needs, I mean mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, like a four-legged stool, that you're in a good place with your mind, or working to get in a good place, because it's chaotic time. Emotionally understanding, you do your work with the emotional intelligence as well as the positive intelligence, knowing and being aware of that. So this is a great wake-up time for men to be aware of, oh yeah, I can see how that now has impacted my relationship, but also impacts my children. And so maybe this is something that I need to work on, which is a huge one physically also, because we need to be taking care of ourselves, eating right, getting enough sleep, and exercising. Our bodies are meant to be exercising, and spiritually having just a understanding of there's a lot going on that's bigger and more than us. And one of those is gratitude, right? Being just grateful, which is a huge thing, learning gratitude through this process, which if you can do it through the divorce, and if it's particularly if it's a challenging divorce, you've just set up yourself and your children for immense success going forward. The gratitude thing is a really awesome thing.
We touched on so many big concepts. I mean, gratitude, if you're able to get that yourself, we are lucky to live in one of the richest places in the world, and living better than at least 50% of the world would quickly trade places with us, no matter what situation we are in the United States, and to not be grateful for that every day is a shame. That's really just a basic thing. The other one, though, is empathy. And I always say to my clients is that, that's the greatest parenting superpower you can have. And it's easy to forget about it when your kids are young, because they just worship you and they just go along with anything you do. They'll do whatever you want, but it becomes really a really great gift when they're tweens or teens, because suddenly that relationship, the two-sided part of that relationship becomes a lot more important.
Yeah, definitely. And oh boy, am I going through the teens and tweens. And so mine are essentially 15, 13, and 11 right now, and they're all girls. And so, yeah, it's, I always say, I knew this was coming. It's not a surprise. 15 years, these dates have been coming up, but I didn't know the amount of mental and emotional effort it was going to take. But the empathy is amazing. And there was a concept that I got involved with, a parenting concept that I got involved with earlier, because we were saying earlier, these little ones, they don't come with a manual. So I remember the first day going, oh man, what am I doing? I have no idea. And it's the parenting concept is called love and logic. And it is approaching every situation with empathy around, oh man, putting it on the kids that, oh, that's their choices, empathy and choices, right? So they make the choices, they make bad choices, but you're not mad at them, right? Because actually, and I can start attesting to this now as they get older, but there's also some really powerful messages that the founders of this talk about, is that be grateful for the mistakes that they make when they're younger, because these are very inexpensive mistakes. You actually want them to be making bad choices so that they can learn that every choice has a consequence, and that can continue to snowball if you make bad choices. But even making one bad choice can have a devastating impact. And I wish I'd have learned this right before I went bankrupt, had failed relationships, got into, all these challenging mistakes that I made in my adult life. If I'd have known a little bit more, or somebody would have emphasized that in my childhood, maybe I would have made less of them and not figured this out later in life. So it's a really awesome concept.
And you use that actively with your clients?
I go back to class about every other year because there's different skill sets for when they're toddlers, for when they're elementary age, for when they're tweens, for when they're teens, and you can start at any time. That's the beautiful thing, because teaching this empathy and teaching these choices can happen anytime. And so I didn't learn it until my adult life, right? So the sooner you get involved.
Well, I like that. It sounds like it is tailored to specific ages, or some of the skills are tailored to specific ages. In coaching, we always talk about, meet people where they are.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean geographically. That means like, where they are in their age group, or where they are in their development, or where they are in their relationship, or, whatever. And kids change. I mean, the differences between 0 and 11, 12, and 12 and 18 are like night and day, but all along that spectrum, they're just changing every day. And if you're not alert to that evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. So dealing with the challenges of a 15-year-old who's wanting to drive and date and see friends and, you know, go to parties and do all that stuff. Obviously very different than your 3-year-old who is throwing food around the house or having a tantrum or won't get dressed or go to bed. But the biggest thing is it's never too late. I was blessed to find it early on. So my oldest started when she was 5 and the other were younger. So now they almost tease, and because they know that I go to classes, I tell them, because, and this is the funny thing, and this is a great thing for dads and men and fathers to know, that it's good to go and learn this stuff. Yeah. Because we don't have these resources, and I didn't have great parents that were teaching me great parenting skills, and a lot of this stuff just becomes behaviors that we carry on from our parents. And what I find is during divorce, we go, oh man, maybe that's not a great behavior. It becomes a maladaptive behavior, right? It helped you when you're in your childhood with your parents and whatever that dynamic was. But when you become an adult and then you have children, that's maybe not as positive. So it's okay to seek out help, right? Seek out coaches, seek out therapists, seek out parenting, seek out a trainer to help you physically. Seeking out help is a sign of strength in my estimation. It takes vulnerability, which also is a sign of strength. But these are all signs of strengths, which I think you will agree that we're starting to see men come around to more than the stoic of, I'll just suck it up and, you know, power through it.
Yeah, I was going to say you could take a pass if you were a generation or two ago because you didn't know about these things. It wasn't available. But I don't know what the statistics are, but more and more men are stepping up, taking 50% responsibility, being active parents, and that's part of the thing that you and I are both trying to do in our work, is trying to get men to be more involved. Unfortunately, in a divorce situation, that maybe it's more of a wake up call, but all men need to, you know, understand how you know, just really important this job is. Now, I know you've got some resources at your website, a downloadable book. Is that The Dad's Guide to Divorce?
Yes, I'd love to offer that for free. It's a free download. It is the exact process that I use in private session with each of my clients. It's a 5-step process to working through divorce, and it's got some examples in there. And it's about a 10-page free download that if anybody's looking, and these can really be also used for any kind of traumatic time frame or stressful time frame. It just helps you put a context around it in a step-by-step process to work through it. So I'll give you the link. You can put in the show notes if they want to go to the divorcedadvocate.com. There's a link there. Also, that's the free download for the Dad's Guide to Divorce. And then also on my podcast, once they're done listening to your podcast, I've gone through each of those 5 in 5 subsequent weeks or consecutive weeks in, I don't know, a couple months ago, so they can listen to it too. So they can. Yeah,
it's a good resource if you are going through this process. You've got over 40 episodes on divorce, touching on all kinds of different subjects, and there's a lot of good information there. And you also have an ongoing course that's starting in a few weeks, you said?
Yes, May 9th, I am starting the Dad's Divorce Blueprint. And what this course is an opportunity to create a healthier and less traumatic divorce process for you and your children. It's based upon a decades old process that was created by Dr. Bruce Fisher, a local doctor here in Colorado, and it has helped thousands and thousands of people through this process, and it has helped them to create and structure a better way to go through it mentally and emotionally, and help their children go through it also. So if any of your listeners are interested in it, I have a special offer for them. I'll give you the link on that as well. It has to go to the specific link, so they'll have to click in your show notes and check out your show notes for the specific link in order to register for that. But it is an absolutely life-changing course.
Great. Well, I really appreciate all the work that you're doing to it's the sport men going through this who need a framework. It's, it's unknown territory. Every divorce is different. Quite often, as you say, it's a surprise, and there's no way that can be considered fun. So, Jude, thank you again for taking the time, and we'll all look for the Divorced Advocate. You got to make sure to spell that correctly when you type it in, both the podcast and the website.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. And everybody, please go and support, like yours, and leave comments for your podcast. That helps us. People don't realize how much it helps people to go and write comments and star your podcasts and share them on social media and all of that stuff. It helps grow our audience, just one person by another. And so please go do that for your show. It's an absolute honor to be here, and I appreciate all your work as well.
Okay. Thank you. Paul Banas,
Thanks, Paul.
See you next time.